You actually just promoted me academically, Honorable Chair.
Oh, but you never know. Maybe it's a sign. Maybe it's a sign that the doctorate is in sight.
It's actually a good sign. It's actually a good sign, and I really appreciate that. Good morning to the honorable members, to yourself, Chair, to my colleagues from both the Provincial Treasury, Office of the Premier, and any other colleagues that are here that have joined the meeting today. My name is Marumo Make. I am the Chief Director for Public Sector Remuneration Analysis in the National Treasury Budget Office. So I think I am with a couple of colleagues today from both the Budget Office as well as the IGR. And with your permission, Chair, if you could allow them to introduce themselves. I think starting with Mr. Gobian, since he is actually the second one to have joined after me. I think Mandla, with the permission of the Chair, and thereafter other colleagues. Thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Chair. Good morning, honorable members. My name is Mandlenkosi McFadden Khobian. I'm from the National Treasury and Provincial Budget Analysis, and I am the budget analyst for Western Cape. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, honorable members. My name is Ukharaletzen Kharekwe. Chief Director responsible for Provincial Budget Analysis, overseeing the implementation of all provinces or provincial departments within the Intergovernmental Relations branch. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning, honorable colleagues. My name is Jonathan Benjamin from the National Treasury. I work together with Mr. Marumo Make. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to check if there's anyone from the National Treasury delegation still to introduce themselves. Okay, I see Minister Wenger has joined us. I would like to welcome Minister to this meeting. I think actually this is the first budget meeting in terms of statutory matters that we're dealing with, that we have the Minister with us, and I'm grateful to have her here. I know the Minister wants to make some introductory remarks as well. So Minister, you're welcome to go ahead, and then Provincial Treasury can introduce their delegation. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, and a very warm welcome to, a very good morning to you all and to the Budget Committee, as well as the colleagues from the Provincial Treasury, the National Treasury, and the Department of the Premier. I'm very happy to be here as my first meeting with the Budget Committee in this new position as the Minister of Finance and Economic Opportunities. I think it's very important that we're able to share with the Budget Committee the quarterly performance indicators, both financial and non-financial, and that you as the people's representatives have the ability to interrogate and to conduct your very important oversight function over the provincial government. So with those brief remarks, I'll hand back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If Provincial Treasury can introduce the delegation.
Good morning, Chairperson. Sorry, I'm just struggling to get my camera on. Good morning, Chairperson and members of the committee. My name is David Savage, Head Official of the Provincial Treasury. Today we are joined by quite an extended team, given some of the matters we're discussing. Ms. Annelies Pick, our Chief Director, Provincial Government Public Finance, Mr. Malcolm Boyson, our Acting Chief Director, Public Policy Services, Mr. Klaas Langenhoven, our Director, Infrastructure, in fiscal and economic services, I have a feeling I've missed one of my colleagues out. Oh, sorry, yes, I have indeed, Mr. Paul Pinar from Business Information and Data Management, and Ms. Sharon van Breda as well. Thank you very much. Looking forward to the discussion with the committee today.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, I'm a little bit sick, so my video is off, and I'm just going to ask that we jump straight into the National Treasury presentation. This comes off a past resolution that we would like to understand the public wages and how it gets put together, and also how it's being budgeted for the next MTF periods. So Mr. Marke, over to you. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Member Brankes here.
Good morning, Member Brankes. Wonderful to have you in budget.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and the honorable members once again. I'm not sure, is the presentation going to be beamed from your side, or should we do it this side? Honorable
It would
Chair.
be wonderful if you could do it from your side, please. Then we can make sure that if you are on the slide that you need to be, then you can't accuse us.
Okay, no, not a problem.
No problem. Thank you so much.
Be able to project it in no time. Is the presentation visible, Honorable Chair?
It is. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, once again, thank you very much for the opportunity to really come and indulge yourself on the issue of the public service wage bill. I think, you requested us to the projection over the next 3 years, which I presume is the 2023 MTEF, which we are currently busy with. So, but I think you would have seen in the presentation, we've given quite a
Mr. Marke, I'm not sure if it's only my device, but you disappear every few seconds and then your voice appears again.
Oh, yes, I think there's something wrong here with I don't know if it's the network, but please you can stop me, Chair, if so that I can reboot. This is just the presentation outline, Chair. What we'll basically do, we will obviously just give a context in terms of the budget 22, what went into budget 22 in terms of the COE, the trends and the strategies that we put together over the past MTF in terms of managing the wage bill. We'll also give some context in terms of the headcount trends for certain sectors. And thereafter, we'll then zoom into the COE strategy as presented in the 2023 MTF guideline and the projected headcounts as well as the forecast there. And thereafter, we'll then conclude with the risks as well as some of the way forward in the presentation. Just as a start, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, in this slide, we're just providing an overview. Looking at budget 2022, also now stretching it to our projections for the 2023 MTEF. And we're saying, the compensation spending, I think, the honorable members will probably be aware because this is the topic. It's somehow a hot topic out there about how we deal with the public service wage bill. And this has been our fastest growing item between 2006 and 7 and 2021 and 22, which has actually grown faster than the economic growth as well as the revenue growth over these years. So the item has been one of the fastest spending item for quite a number of years up to 2021-22. And it accounts for about 32% of our total consolidated expenditure, and we'll show in the next coming slide how this composition has changed over the years. And I mean, with 2022 budget 2022, I mean, what the strategy there was that I mean the aim is to continue to slow growth in the public wage bill and try to change the composition of the spending toward other budgetary items that also will contribute to stimulating growth. I mean, because we needed to also deal with the issue of the crowding out effect to avoid a situation where we end up with certain sectors just paying salaries without any money available for service delivery. So I think it was very important that we start bringing strategies to try and restrain growth in the COE budget. In terms of the graph, I mean, it just shows the projections. I mean, the budget 2022 plus the projections to 2025-26. In 2022-23, which is the current financial year, the growth in the public service, and this is the public service. I know we wrote the public sector. This is the public service, which is provinces and national, grew by about 2.3% to about 609 billion rand in the current financial year, which is inclusive of the 20.5 billion, which we added as a once-off allocation for 2 financial years to deal with the public service wage agreement relating to Resolution 1 of 2020-21, which is actually the largest deviation from Budget 2020 and Budget 2021, which set up the fiscal consolidation measures. So I mean, the wage bill, because what we initially estimated at the time was that we would have a wage freeze, but then the Resolution 1 of 2020-21 came, which brought the cash gratuity dispensation and needed us to add the 20.5 billion. But now in 2023-24, I mean, there is that a decline of 1.6%. I mean, because then we go back to the original objectives of the fiscal consolidations, and the cash gratuity disappears in that financial year. So meaning that, I mean, in the baseline for departments, there isn't any money that has been provided for any wage agreement relating to that financial year. And 2023-24, it's also the last year of the fiscal consolidation. So we start exiting the fiscal consolidation from 2024-25 moving forward. Hence, there is a 4.1% increase in the budget for the public service wage bill, because we then are starting to allow for inflationary budgeting. And we also estimated that, I mean, using the budget review inflation, I mean, I know that inflation numbers have changed, but we kept it to the budget review at 4.5%. But the 2024-25, the 4.1%, it's actually below the projection there as well. I think the projection was also around about 4.5%. So you could see that even if we're exiting fiscal consolidation, it means that there are certain sectors that we have not afford to cater for that for that inflationary growth. One of the reasons could be that, I mean, they've been having pressures in their budget, which then led to that lower growth. Just moving on to the apologies, Chair, my slide seems not to be moving. If I could open share again, apologies. I think I'm having some issues here. Yeah. Now, just looking at the I mean, going back to budget 2022 and the strategies, I mean, that have been implemented, I mean, also emanating from the fiscal consolidation of 2020 and 2021. I mean, this graph just shows, I mean, the trends in COE and the trend prior the fiscal consolidation and the trend after the fiscal consolidation. So the red line shows the trend before we implemented the fiscal consolidation. And then if you're saying, I mean, the compensation spending for national and provinces, I mean, grew by 7.3% on average from 2014-15 to 2019-20, compared to the 6.8% average growth for other, I mean, for the overall non-interest expenditure. So the COE has been growing faster than all other items that are, I mean, like infrastructure, goods and services, and the others. And I mean, if you look at that, I mean, as I have said, the red line shows what the trend would have been if we did not implement the fiscal consolidations. So the public service wage bill would have actually reached close to about 800 billion rand by 2024-25 if we did not do anything. And then which would have obviously also increased our borrowing requirements in terms of financing, because part of the reason why we did the fiscal consolidation was that we also needed to deal with the primary balance, where we bring non-interest expenditure and revenue closer to each other, because currently, I mean, there was a gap between the two, which then necessitated or which increased our borrowing requirements. So after the fiscal consolidation, I mean, you would have seen that, I mean, that is the trends on the black and the black line as well as the gray line. I mean, the gray line is the trend excluding the cash gratuity. And then the black line includes the trends with the cash gratuity. So it shows that even with the cash gratuity or even with the resolution 1 of 2021, I mean, the deviation is not that much or that's not that bigger. I mean, we still are realizing the gains that we aimed to achieve when we implemented the fiscal consolidation objectives. And I would like to also reiterate the point, because the wage bill on its own, it's a very sensitive matter. And it's sensitive because it affects a whole lot of people. I mean, this is about the people's livelihoods. So, and we're saying that as government, I mean, as much as we implemented the fiscal consolidation to try and restrain growth, as well as dealing with our runaway to GDP, as well as trying to reduce the borrowing requirement. As government, we continue to respect the collective bargaining process. But however, we must indicate that, I mean, should any future salary adjustment exceed compensation ceilings or the compensation budgets, I mean, we will have to also look at other trade-offs that might need to happen. Because if the unit cost continues to increase because of the higher wages, what that does is that it also has an impact on your headcounts, because it just simply means that you cannot, for that money that is available for you to increase capacity in different sectors, you end up taking that money to fund the unit cost. So we are saying that those trade-offs will need to happen if those future wage agreements becomes bigger, because we still need to maintain these fiscal consolidation objectives. Otherwise, we will really enter a very dangerous fiscal path, which will become unsustainable in the near future. But having said that, I mean, I think we must also appreciate, and probably the honourable members and the chair would have seen this slide when the Division of Revenue team came to present. I think in this slide, I just want to bring to attention that as much as we are saying there must be a restraint in growth, I mean, we must also appreciate the fact that, I mean, population has been growing and the service demand have also been growing in big sectors like health and education, including also police and others. So we also, I mean, with the projected revenue collection, or what we normally call the windfalls, I mean, which gave us actually the fiscal space in the budget 2022 to maneuver and try to respond to some of the spending pressures while we also continue to stabilize the debt. I mean, we made some monies available to some sectors. I mean, education received in total about 57 billion over the next 3 years, of which the biggest share of that, I mean, which I think it equates to about 9 billion in the current financial year, was really for them to deal with some of the spending pressures, as well as also, I mean, in some provinces, add the capacity, especially as it relates to teachers and other needs, including within their compensation. So we've added money in the compensation line so that we can assist the education sector, which was really under a serious pressure in the last financial year. We also added some funding in health, 21 billion rand for COVID response, as well as the funding that continues over the MTF to deal with some of the pressures that they had. And then other priorities, as I mean, the 25 billion rand on other priorities that also relates to the continuation of the 2021-22 wage agreement. So as I said, I mean, as much as we try to restrain growth on the unit cost side of things, we also have to appreciate, as I've said, I mean, the fact that there is service need, which we need to respond to, especially in the bigger sectors. So hence these allocations were made. And this is the composition of the expenditure after the fiscal consolidation. You would have seen, I mean, in 2013-14, compensation accounted for about 35.7%, and I think we projected to decline to about 2024-25 to about 30.8% of the total consolidated expenditure. But I think our biggest concern is still the debt service cost, because it's also now, as much as compensation, it's shrinking in terms of the share and creating a space, but that space seems to be occupied by now the interest, the amount that we pay on to service our debt, which grew from 9.6% share to about 16.3%. And I think part of the fiscal consolidation, as I've said, we want to see that also declining over the MTF. We want to see the debt service cost decreasing over the MTF, so that the space can actually open for other items like the capital, as well as the household and goods and services, which are our actually critical service delivery items. I mean, goods and services has actually shrinked over the years from 15.2 to about 13.1. Capital has shrunk from 11.7 to 9.1. At least households has increased over the years. But yeah, like I said, we want to see interest also shrinking, so that the space can open for those big service delivery items to start taking the large, actually a much fairer share of the total consolidated spending of government. Now, I think, Chair, I think I've got another problem again of the slide not moving. If you could just bear with me. Okay. Yeah. Now moving on to the next slide. Oh, sorry. Apologies, Chair. I seem to be having some technical issues here.
Chairperson, sorry, is it fine if I share the presentation and then Mr. Marke can just indicate to me next slide?
Please, if you could do that, because I'm having some challenges. If you could do that for me, please.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just busy loading it from our side quickly.
Yeah, slide 7. I think we are in slide 7 now.
Okay, I'm just loading it, sir, from our side. Can you just give me 1 second?
Yeah, while the colleagues load, I think in slide 7, Chair, we just wanted to also just to bring to attention, or just to, I mean, the trends in headcounts over the years. Also, I mean, just focusing on the bigger sectors, and I mean, we're saying that, I mean, the 3 big sectors: education, health, and police. I mean, and because there's always a misconception out there that the public service is bloated. And we've done a research that actually tells us that the public service is not bloated, and I think the problem is the unit cost, not necessarily the headcount. So, and you will see in the numbers, I mean, the biggest numbers in the public service are in 3 sectors: education, health, and police, which account for close to 83% of the total public service. And I mean, these are, I mean, if you look at education and health, I mean, they've actually are the biggest contributors of the growth in the headcounts between 2006 and 7 and 2021 and 22, because they've grown actually above the national average. So the growth rates in education is about 1.3, and in health about 2.7, but national average it's about 1.11%. But generally, there's been actually a slow growth in headcount over the years, as I've said, because the competition is between really the unit cost as well as the headcount, which obviously, I mean, if we continue with higher unit cost, it does have a really negative impact on our ability to increase capacity in the bigger sectors. Police, I mean, was below the national average. I think police it's quite a concern if you look at the numbers, because they've actually decreased. I mean, if we look at 2015, 16, and 2021, 22, and I mean, it's really not in line with what is currently happening and the increased crime. But I mean, we've had an engagement with them. They are currently working together with the National Treasury to try and see how they can deal with this situation moving forward. In defense, I think we did not include the reserve force, but there's been quite a decline in the number there in defense. I mean, safe to say that there was early retirement dispensation that also affected the 2 big sectors, but defense as well. There is a strategy that they've put together, working with the National Treasury to try and see how they can deal with the measures. Defense is one of the sectors that actually is experiencing bigger pressures on their compensation budget. But I mean, as I've said, growth slowed between 2015, 16, and 2021, 2021 because of those 2 sectors. But if you look at health and education, I think the numbers have been actually increasing over the years, except in 2010-11, where the numbers were quite higher in education, and then the numbers did decline between that and 2015 and 16. But from 2006 and 7 to 2010-11, I mean, the growth in health and education was quite stronger, and actually over the entire period, I mean, as I've said, they are growing above the national average. Moving on to the next slide. I think now, I mean, there we just needed to, we just thought we should just provide context, Honorable Chair, in terms of where we are and where we come from in terms of us trying to manage the wage bill, as well as the impact that this had on the head count. So now I think we just zoom in now into the 2023 MTF and the strategy that we've put in place as government. I think, as I've said, and the first point is supposed to be 2024-25, not 2024-24. I think it's an error there. So as I've said, we are exiting fiscal consolidation in 2024-25, and we are allowing for CPI increases across various spending items. But however, I must just indicate some of how we're going to apply some of these strategies as much as we're exiting fiscal consolidation. So as government and labor, I mean, through through the public service summit or after the public service summit, which was held in March, government and Labour agreed that we need to work on realigning the future wage agreement with the budget process and ensure that we meet all the necessary compliance requirement, because you would recall that in the past there was those alignments up until the last leg of the 2018 wage agreement, which could not be implemented due to the turn in economic events at the time. But I think we now agreed that we needed to do that moving forward, even if we agree on annual wage settlements. Such settlements must still be aligned to the budget process, because it makes it difficult now to go and negotiate when the budget has already been tabled, and when agreements are reached, you find that Treasury now needs to go and find the money, which often affects other items. But however, as a strategy, for 2023-24, we said that moving forward, departments baseline, we will need the departments to keep their COE baseline constant, except when they budget for headcount increases, up until such time that a settlement is agreed, and then the baseline will increase in line with what it's supposed to be increasing by. Because when we then allow for this, we put the inflation and all those kind of things. Such also makes life a bit difficult for government when we enter into the negotiations with Labour, because that becomes your starting point, as you have put up front that I've got an inflation budget, I've got inflation already budgeted for in my budget. So we agreed that the baseline will be kept constant and the increases will be informed by what would have been the negotiated settlement in the PSCBC. And I think this strategy will actually provide a relief to some of the bigger sectors, because what it will allow them to do is to focus on budgeting for their headcounts rather than trying to estimate what the future wages increases are going to be. So, and what it will mean is that, obviously when agreements are reached, the national government will have to come in and try to see how they can assist, even with the departments that have got pressures. Because in what we've noticed in the past is that even if you say to the departments budget for an inflation, but if you've got a department that has got some pressures, etc., that amounts end up being absorbed in the budget. And when you even reach an inflation agreement in the PSCBC and you come back and you say, we said to you as a department budget for this, you still find that department not having the monies to deal with that. So I think this strategy will also provide a relief in that sense, that it will mean that the national government will have to come and see how it deals with any increases in wages in here. And I think that is the second point that I've made. And then all other allowance, we are allowing, and benefits, we're allowing them to increase with respect to the PSCBC resolutions. I think in the issue of the performance bonuses, we phased that out, and we encouraging the department to budget in line with the incentive policy. And given what I've said, the fiscal, as much as we are exiting fiscal consolidation, they still, we still estimate some problems with that 4.1% growth in 2024-25. And therefore, the stringent management of the wage bill will still be required, and departments will still need to really be careful in how they manage the feeling of both their critical and non-critical position within the establishment to ensure that they remain within their budget and still deliver on their mandate. So it's still not going to be like free for all, the way department must just go and appoint as and when they just wants to. We still need to make sure that the appointments are within the allocated budget that the department have, and that we are still able to control the wage bill moving forward. So that is the strategy that we actually have put forward for the 2023 MTF budget. But I must also indicate that for 2024-25, because this strategy, we adopted this in the 2023 MTF. So the 2024-25, I mean, that 4.1% that you've seen there, it's actually in budget. So we could not take it out because that would have entailed budget cuts, and we did not really want to go that route anymore. So we wanted to give the department some chance. I think if you can go to the next slide.
That when the presenters on the floor, that you just keep your mics on mute, please. Thank you. Mr. Markey, you can continue.
Yeah, thank you. I think here, yeah, so this is actually just a breakdown, Chairperson, of the first graph by sectors, where we then focused in the numbers over the MTF. So we are not taking into account any additional head counts in this in the 2025-26. We just add in the inflation. If you look at national, I mean, the national, they are growing by 5% from 2023-24 to 2024-25 and 4.5% in the outer years. Provinces seems to be the ones that will have a bit of a problem in 2024-25 at 3.7% instead of 4.5% that I've indicated that we've allowed for them to budget for. And that problem, if you can see it, it's going to be in the education sector. So it means that, I mean, there will be some implication on the affordability of their headcounts. But like I said, I mean, we really tried to meet the sector halfway in the budget 2022, where we allocated quite a significant amount of money to the sector to deal with the pressures. Health will still, I mean, we also have a little bit of a problem at 4.1%, but that is it's slightly below inflation. And then there are other sectors, I think, for police and defense, correctional services, and correctional services, I think they are growing in line with what I mean the inflation as projected in the budget review. But like I said, I mean, these are just projections, as wage increases are also going to be informed by the PSCBC resolutions. And like I said, in 2025-26, we are not allowing for this 4.5% to be on the baseline for departments. So this is the focus that we just did from our side. The 4.1% is the one that is in the baseline of the department that they've budgeted for. And then there is that decrease in 2023-24 of 1.6%. I think as I've already mentioned it because of the ones of cash gratuity that we had in the budget. So in essence, Chairperson, I mean, this is our projection over the MTF on the wages. Like I said, the risk that we are flagging there, which affect mostly provinces. I mean, education is still our biggest risk. We still need to work with the sector to see how we can deal with that, as we've done in the past budget. Health, 4.1%. I think slightly a risk there, but also I think we also need to work closely with them and with our colleagues in the IGR and the public finance to try and zoom into that and see where the problems are going to be. And the next slide. And then we also, just based on those numbers, just projected the headcounts over the MTF, or what will be the implication on the headcounts based on the average unit cost. So this is basically what the numbers that we can afford in the budget that we have. So the budget in 2022-23, I mean, as you've seen, the headcounts about 1.3 million headcounts, 915 for provinces in 2022-23. So that's what basically the unit cost, based on the unit cost, what provinces can afford in terms of the headcount. That is projected to increase a bit in 2023-24 because of the allocations that we made in education. But then in 2024-25, based on that 3.7%, I mean, the numbers, the affordability is going to go down from 917 to about 910. So about 7,000 positions, total 7,000 positions in provinces will actually, by default, becomes unfunded because of that below inflation growth, and then in the outer year, because we're projecting inflation, the 910 will still be affordable. So I think, as and when we move into this MTF, I mean, those are some of the areas that we will have to zoom into when we engage these sectors. Moving on to the next slide. Now, looking at the risks and the cost of these risks in the current year, actually, and probably moving on to the MTF. I think as the members will probably, and the colleagues will probably be aware, we are currently, I mean, in the wage negotiations process with labor, I mean, which started on the 4th of May. And we've actually going towards the end of that process. And we are saying that any associated costs with the outcome of the wage negotiation will have to be factored into the public service wage bill once the negotiations are concluded. Yes, once we finish with these negotiations, then we will inform, I think, all the relevant stakeholders.
Mr. Marke,
Still audible.
your voice disappeared a little bit there. I'm not sure
Madam,
if it's because you're back. Thank you. I'm not sure if it's because we're on the slide that says we need 9 billion rand, but you can continue.
Okay. Yes. So yeah. So I think we will once that process is done, engage with the colleagues in terms of what the actual outcome is and how we're going to fund it in terms of that. In terms of the latest, and I must say, but I mean, there is nothing really much that we can say, Honorable Chair, about the wage agreement, because the process is currently underway in the council. But we can only reflect on what has already been in the public domain in terms of the offers that government has put on the table. I think it has already been reported, and we thought that because it has already been reported, therefore we can then share with the committee. So the offer that is currently on the table is underpinned by two things. I think the continuation of the current non-pensionable allowance in the current financial year, because anyway the members are already getting that, which is the 20.5 billion rand that has been budgeted for in the fiscal framework. So that is in the budget. And then after, I mean, having engaged, initially that was our initial offer in the council, that we just want that to continue, and then we then focus on 2023-24. But because of what is happening really with the cost of living and everything going up, I mean, the season is really not a very good season for all the employers in terms of the wage negotiations because of the inflation that is currently running away, the petrol price and the high interest rates. So obviously then we couldn't really agree with labor after having tabled various offers. Then we went with the final offer of 2% across all the levels, or the 2% that they can decide to distribute on whatever sliding scales that they see fit. And this will require an additional 9 billion rand, which is not yet in the fiscal framework. And which then means that, I mean, if this is signed, this is the money that we as the National Treasury will have to go and find somewhere. We'll have to either look at whether it's revenue performance, whether it's reprioritization, or whether we then say headcounts, whichever way that we'll need to do. But yes, the 9 billion rand, it's not in the fiscal framework at the moment. So we will need to find it. And anything even above that, if the 2% is rejected, it will even make things more difficult for the state because then it will be a huge deviation from the current fiscal framework. And we are saying that, I mean, obviously, I mean, there is still a risk. As I've said, 2023-24, it's a constant budget. It does not make provision for any wage increases. So if should we negotiate for a higher wage that the state cannot afford in that year, so and the other subsequent years, So it will have to mean that something must either give in. We either have to find money through many things, whether it's borrowings, it's reprioritization, it's headcount reduction, whichever way. That after having done an assessment, because I think these things you need to do an assessment before you take such decisions and see what the implications will be. As I've said, headcount reduction really. We've done a study and we don't think headcounts has been the problem. In fact, if there's anything, headcounts should increase in those big sectors, which account for 83% of the total composition of the public service. Moving on to the next slide. I think I'm going towards conclusion, Chair. Just 5 minutes. Moving on to the next slide. Next slide, please.
Austin, the next slide.
Just on this slide, I mean, on the points that to note for the committee and the way forward. I mean, we are currently, I mean, at the advanced stage of the wage negotiations, as I've indicated. And I must indicate, I mean, it's not just a contrary to the belief. I think I've seen some articles that this is a centrally process. I mean, this is not a centralized process. Provinces are part and parcel of the negotiations right from the highest decision-making body, which is the mandate committee. Premiers are part of the mandating committee, and then the negotiating team. Provinces are part of the negotiating team through the employer caucus. We're always with them in the council. Some of them attend. I think Western Cape is one of the provinces that is always attending. And yeah, so we are currently engaging with Labour as a collective, government collective on this matter. So I think, I mean, there's also some work that is also been done really by the DPSA of reviewing other areas, OSDs, etc., just to see if whether we can come up with any dispensation. I think they do this review after every 10 years. So the review does not necessarily mean that we are going to do away with the OSDs. It's just to see if whether we've achieved the objectives that we would have wanted to achieve with the OSDs. And then given the current all future will only be binding based on affordability. I think this is what we also agreed on in terms of the summit, as well as what the Concord will have said. I mean, Treasury will need to give approval on the go-ahead to implement any wage agreement and give an undertaking that there will be funding that is available there. So it has to be the Treasury that does that. So in order to support economic growth and prevent continued increase in debt, compensation spending must be brought under control. I think, I mean, we've emphasized on this point that, I mean, we, especially as I've said on the unit cost side of things, and we cannot deviate from the fiscal consolidation measures that we implemented in 2020 and 2021. So ideally, what we will need to get, I mean, we will want the negotiation to take into account, I mean, is that, I mean, we also need to get a sensible agreement which is workable, taking into account the current economic condition, an agreement which is fair and efficient and strive towards value for money, an agreement which preserves the relationship between parties and preferably drawing parties together rather than forcing them apart, and also an agreement that takes into account the need to strike a balance between unit cost increases and the need for additional headcount increases in frontline services such as education, police, etc. So in general, I mean, we're saying that the public service wage must be balanced between competing interests in the broader economics based on these issues of fairness and affordability, given our current issues. I think these are some of the issues that we put forward even in Labour when we started our negotiation through our pre-negotiation processes. That I mean, we also need to strike a balance between what we need to regard as fair remuneration, as well as the need to respond to the current economic issues that the country is facing. So I think we just thought that we must also indicate that. I think if we can move on to the next slide. I think there are two most the trends in the wage bill as well as the headcount. The red line is the growth in the headcounts, which was about 16% increase in headcounts between 2006 and 2019-20. But on the same time, if you look at average remuneration was increased by actually 47%. So average remuneration, which is informed by the salary increases, was the biggest actual cost driver in terms of the growth in the wage bill from 2006 and 7. And then the last slide, which is also for information purposes, also, I mean, because there's also this notion that the public sector is bloated at the top. I mean, there are a whole lot of managers in the public service, and this slide actually, the opposite is actually true. The opposite. I mean, if you look at the total non-SMS members, they account for about 99.2% of the total public service, and these are the people whose salaries are negotiated in the PSCBC, and the SMS only accounts for about 0.8%, which is close about 9,000 SMS in total in the public service. So this is also just to help you understand the composition of the public service itself. So, Chair, I think that is our story in terms of the presentation. I really hope that we really met your expectation in terms of what you were looking for. I mean, like I said, we are still currently in the budget process. We are at the beginning of the budget process, and we are starting to engage with different sectors at a national level, and there will also be functional groups that involves provinces to also zoom into these pictures and see what kind of recommendations we can subsequently make to our national MTECs as well as the MinCombat and cabinet in terms of some of these pressures and what we think should happen. Thank you very much for your attention, Honorable Chair and Honorable members and the colleagues. Thank you. That's our story.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, I'm gonna take your hands first because I think I'm still in shock. So if members have hands now, you can raise them. I see Member Mackenzie's hand. Let me just see if there's any other hands. Okay, Member Mackenzie, you can go first.
Thank you, Chairperson. I see you are in shock. I'm not in shock. I think there's a word deeper than shock, but I can't say it in here. Thank you for the presentation to the National Treasury. I think we knew some of these things, but I'm happy that it comes directly from National Treasury and not from us and from the technical officials. The last two slides and comments for me was very important because we all have seen that Constitutional Court judgment. And although it was a good judgment, there were some bad things. I'm happy that the Chief Director actually highlighted some of the things. More practical questions, Chair. You've mentioned, Chief Director, I'm not sure who's going to answer that, around the I think you mentioned 4.1% during the current, for provinces in the outer years. We saw inflation reach, I think, by 7% recently, or what would impact, because we're already 9 billion short, and we now have to, on all likelihood, given where we are in September and where government departments are, that we'll have to go and seemingly, and you can just correct me so I don't walk away with the wrong interpretation. Is there a risk that right now you might need to go borrow the 9 billion if you can't find the cuts? And then the second question has a new, or given the recent inflation numbers and where we're going, and we might not have 4.5%, 1%, we might go up to 5 or even 6% in 2023-7. Has there been other projections done to ensure provinces don't bear the burden? And the C part, given the Constitutional Court did highlight some of the flaws in making the decisions, has there been a recomposition of the technical teams and the consultation teams to prevent departments or whoever was involved during that previous negotiation period to make those determinations without proper technical consultations to avoid us having to go through this lengthy legal process on the, I think, 2018 wage agreements? And my last questions be, has there been, obviously there are people that are retired, and I know there's been not filling some of these posts, but has there been a wide attempt by Treasury to look at all, particularly our SOEs that are not working well, to look at how we can cut some of those posts or bring some of those functions into government department to avoid having to transfer the billions of rands that we transfer to those institutions, and let line departments run with some of those mandates, because some of those, I think there are 270 or so SOEs, and as we all know, the majority of them are not functioning very well, to cut those costs so that those things can be managed by departments. And the last one is the billions we pay in consultants. At what point are we going to put a determination to say, guys, you actually do employ Ricardo to do the job. Let Ricardo do the job, and let's save on those billions that we pay in consultants. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Bosman.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I would just like to know, on slide 2, I'm not sure if I heard correctly, but was it mentioned that if the cost of compensation continues to increase, Treasury will have to go and borrow more? Did I hear that correctly? And if Treasury does not have to go and borrow more, where will that additional funds that have been allocated to education and health come from? And where do we foresee that 9 billion coming from? Thanks.
Chair, you want me to answer before you come with your, just quickly so that you can come with your questions?
No, Dr. Mark, Mr. Marke, I'm going to quickly ask my questions because the shock has now settled in a little bit.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to find out, what is the best practice internationally in terms of percentage of public wages for a budget? Because looking at these slides, the amount that we are spending on public wages as a percentage of the budget does not seem sustainable. And it's one thing going to go borrow money for infrastructure that you may have a return on investment on later. And I'm always a big proponent for ensuring that skills are adequately compensated. But when you start borrowing for wages, that is not money in the normal return on investment sense that you're necessarily going to get back. Eventually, you're going to have to pay back that loan. So where is that money coming from? And you mentioned specifically that provinces are going to have a bit of a problem. So it seems as if it's a little bit of underestimation, or as to the problem that we will have in 2024. If you could just assist us with those, thank you.
Oh, thanks, Honorable Chair. Maybe let me start with your questions going up. Yeah, look, in terms of the percentage, I mean, there is not really any specific percentage that is currently out there. In fact, what we normally do, maybe in the slide that we just avoided, we could have put that slide as well. What we normally do, we look at the wage bill as a percentage of the GDP. So that is what the OECD does. The OECD always does some analysis looking at the wage bill as a percentage of the GDP across their members as well as the non-members. And if you can look at us, I mean, we are more on the far left of the graph. I mean, we are spending higher than the OECD countries in terms of our percentage of the wage bill to the total GDP. And we are saying from where we are sitting, that is really not as sustainable. And we also need to start comparing ourselves with our peers and see where they are. Because currently we compare, I think, with countries like Norway and I think Denmark, which are also having the highest percentage of GDP on COE. But the difference between us and them is that as much as they've got a higher percentage of COE to GDP, even their headcounts, I mean, they've got a higher proportion of public sector headcounts in relation to their total employment, whereas it's the opposite in South Africa. So we are having a higher spending as a percentage of the GDP, but our contribution, our government's employment contribution is not higher. It doesn't match those countries that we compare to, so which is a problem. And the reason why it will also be difficult to just have a specific percentage on the budget side, it's because of also the delivery models. I mean, and like I said, I mean, 83% of our our compensation spending of our public services in the three sectors: police, education, and health. And which, I mean, if you look at health, I mean, 84% of the population relies on the public health system. So, which means that in essence, the delivery of health services in the country, the biggest, it's in the public service, and then in the education as well. Education, public sector plays a big role. But if you compare with other countries that have probably got the NHS, like in England, where I mean it's a universalized health system, and private sectors plays a much bigger role, then you only have a situation where they've got a high number of people that are employed in the public service. So they will have private sector playing a much bigger role, and people actually going to the private sector to get all these services, and probably then government subsidizing them. So it also has to do with how, I mean, how you design yourselves based on the service need. I think it's actually also happening, Honorable Chair, in South Africa internally. If you look at all the 9 provinces. I mean, you've got in the Western Cape, you spend about 50% of your budget on about 55% on your budget on COE. But then when you compare to other provinces, you will probably have another province that spends 70%, simply because of some of these dynamics, because the other provinces will probably not have a whole lot of quintile 4 and 5 schools. I mean, which then means that most of their schools are no-fee schools, which then requires them to hire more publicly funded educators, whereas in those provinces, Gauteng and Western Cape, that have got all this quintile 4 and 5, where the SGBs can also subsidize those areas. So it's a mixture of things that really dictate how you then structure your wage bill. But I think at a national level, what we can do as a national treasury, we can have a benchmark, and I think that's what we want to do. We want to then set a benchmark that says to us, I think between 30, for example, and 32% is acceptable. Once you start exiting that, then it's a red flag. So you need to go back and start looking at which areas actually contributing to you now breaking that benchmark that you have set for yourselves. So yeah, I think those matters. I mean, it's more like related to policy matters. Just in terms of the borrowing for wages, etc. Look, we want to avoid that, because if we have to go and borrow for wages, then all this work that we've done in 2020 and 2021 on the fiscal consolidation, it's out of the window, and nobody else will ever trust the way everything and anything that we do as government. I mean, even the markets, as well as the investors and the rating agencies, no one will trust anything that we say, even in our budget, because it will mean that the budget that we table then are not credible. So we have to find a way. We either have to put a fight in the negotiation and try to help our partners understand, because that is also how you approach the negotiation. You need to help your partners understand where you come from and what will happen if you take a certain direction. But like I said as well, that I think what made things difficult in these negotiations, I mean, it's the inflation that is running away, which Honorable McCain has correctly pointed out. I mean, it has made things difficult, not only for government, but for many employers that are currently in the negotiation process. And the other thing that also made these things difficult, Honorable Chair members, is that, remember, in 2020-21, we actually achieved a wage freeze. Even though it was by default, it was not intentional, but we achieved a wage freeze because we couldn't implement that last leg. And then we won the case in court. And then in 2021-22, it was actually also a wage freeze, because the cash gratuity it's actually a once-off. If you look at for senior managers, it was just money that came once off and then it was gone. So and then there was that 1.5%, which Labour also argues that majority of their members were getting it through the pay progression. So for 2 years, in a way, we have not really been increasing the salaries of the public servants. And the argument that they are also making is that, I mean, they went in 2020, 21 when the country was in these higher levels of lockdown, and the health workers went and put their lives on the line to try and save the country. So those are some of the dynamics that comes as and when we engage. But I think we are in a much better position than we would have been if we did not implement the fiscal consolidation, as per the slide that I think it was slide 2, where I was showing the trends. But in terms of the borrowing, I don't think we will at this stage we'll want to go and borrow even the 9 billion rand. We will not want to even go and borrow the 1 million rand. Hopefully, we probably the windfall can continue even in the current financial year and provide us a little bit of a relief for the current financial year. But I think 2023-24, it's a big problem for us. And what we are also saying there is that, and it also now relates to the question that Honorable McKenzie was raising, as whether how are we going to protect the provinces. It also relates to what I said in the beginning when I said that the strategy is to allow the department to keep the COE line constant and let them focus on budgeting for headcount increases and nothing else. And as I said, the advantage of them doing that is because if there's, let's just say next year there is a higher settlement that is negotiated, so it means that the national government will have to come back and fund it from the first percentage, from zero, because we have not asked the departments to put anything in their baseline. So I think that's how that will protect the department. But I mean, like I said, there's nothing in 2023-24. A higher wage increase then will also mean that something has to give in. If we can't do reprioritization, it will definitely impact headcounts. And these are some of the things that we'll have to put, we actually have put on the table, even when we engage with labor, because the reason why you see that trends of headcount not even grown, I mean, it's because our wage bill, I mean, there's also another slide just that we did not present. I mean, from 2007 and 8 up until 2019-20, we've been increased. It has been there's been a real term growth of 2%. It has been 2% on average above inflation, and hence it was on an unsustainable path. I think I've dealt with the issue of the inflation of the. So currently the inflation that we put there, Honorable McKenzie, I mean, we just put the inflation in line with what the guideline is saying. But of course, as I said, should it be a 6%, whatever, a higher figure next year? I mean, national government will have to find ways. We can't come back and say provinces must come up with a strategy. We will have to give direction in terms of how that should be funded. And I think that is also some of the issues that the provincial MECs and premiers were raising when we meet in the mandate committee, that we should not create unfunded mandate through wage negotiations. We should avoid at all costs creating an unfunded mandate through a wage negotiation. And then in terms of what you are raising, to ensure that we avoid the mistake that we made with the Concord. So hence, part of the agreement from the Public Service Summit, and it's also in the declaration, was that once an agreement is reached, I mean, there has to be a certificate of compliance that is issued by the PSCBC. So somebody in the PSCBC, their legal service will have to sit down and say, what are the legislative requirements? The letter from the Treasury is needed that says this money will fund this. And then once everything is done, then they will issue a certificate of compliance. So, and there is a team, by the way, which I mentioned is the employer caucus, which is made up of national as well as some colleagues in the provinces that are dealing with these matters. So this is the negotiating team actually for government, and ours is to ensure that all these issues are actually dealt with. Look, on the issue of consultants, I think it's a procurement issue. And and I think my colleagues probably will come and assist as well on this one, because if I recall properly, I mean, I think there was a cost containment measure that was issued by the OCPO some times ago about the issue of consultants, and where we were saying to discouraging department from hiring consultants to come and do the work that officials are supposed to be doing. And I guess maybe, I mean, that is the work that we could also do. In fact, actually, it's also part of the resolution. It's what Labour says, they call it agentization of the state. In fact, Labour is really not happy on that. And these are the people that we appoint consultants to do their work. So they've actually given us as a task. It also relates to also the other work on entities. So there are two works that needs to happen on the government side. And I know on the entity side, the minister is really committed to this one, that we need to review all the public entities. In fact, I think that work would have already started. So we need to review all the public entities with exactly the aim, with exactly what Honorable Mackenzie indicated, to look at the head counts in those entities and see if whether some of them we can recommend that they either be absorbed in departments or they either be done away with. So that work is actually, I mean, I'm sure it's the right time. Treasury will come and will go and present in Parliament what the outcomes of that will be. Because the problem with entities is that some of them, they go and enter in all these unaffordable wage agreements, which also put us under pressure in the PSCBC, because the PSCBC unions also benchmark themselves with that. I mean, when you give ESCOM at 7%, you go to the PSCBC and the unions are like, but why ESCOM is getting 7%? Despite the fact that it's a state-owned a company that is supposed to fund their operations. But given the problems that are there, I mean, people will always benchmark themselves with that. So I think there is work with regard to that one. It's actually also in the declaration that we came from the summit, including this one of consultants, to ensure that, I mean, we do away with this issue, what they term as the agentization of the state, and make sure that consultants are appointed when there is actually a need for them to be appointed, and they are appointed for a specific period, and when that period expires, then they should be paid and exit the system. And there has to be a capacity building process as part of that. So yeah, I think that we will take that one actually, Honorable Mackenzie. But like I said, I think that the work is actually already would have started on both two, because unions also raised that sharply as a concern. So I think those chairperson, those were the questions. I think the other one was also on the borrowing. Like I said, we don't want to borrow for wages. We do not want to borrow for wages. I think I can repeat that one over and over again, Honorable Chair. It's really, it will throw us out if we do that. In fact, we will set a very wrong precedent that every time a higher wage is negotiated and settled, the National Treasury will go and borrow the money. And like I said, we've done the fiscal consolidation simply because we wanted to stabilize the debt. We also wanted to make sure that the primary balance, which is the difference between revenue and non-interest expenditure, is in the positive. And our projection shows that, I mean, we will achieve a positive primary balance from 2024-25, and we want to keep it that way so that we can stabilize the debt. We'll have to see when it comes if we come back with this 9 billion. Like I said, if the revenue performance and the windfall can assist us, or if we can look at other areas where we can find some of the savings, whether through under expenditure, etc. But we need to protect service. I think that is the most important thing that we'll have to do, is to protect service, and that is the message that also came when in this mandate committee, that we need to protect services, especially the critical services. So thank you, Honorable Chair. I don't know if Meokhale, you want to come in from the IGR perspective. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Marumo. So maybe just to on the issues around consultants, just to indicate that Prior to, I think, around 2009-10, provinces were spending quite, I would say, a high amount on consultants. But the pressures that have been on provincial budgets, particularly around when there were implementation of OSD, starting with education at 2007-8, and then health 8-9. So in those years, I mean, before then, I mean, obviously we know that as a country we're doing well, so money was not an issue. So we could see that since there was such pressure, especially on those two departments, because that's where we saw that there was a big amount around. If you look at the item called, I think it's business advisory services, you'll find that a department having R1 billion, obviously in education, not any smaller department. But you find that a big department, let's say one education department in the country, is having R1 billion on just business advisory services. But over time, with the budget pressures, we've seen that there's been a huge reduction on consultants. So what provinces outsource on is what obviously the services that we don't have in government, such as, I mean, we know that especially for infrastructure planning, you'll need architects, you'll need whatever the town planners for that. So that's what tends to be outsourced. But if you look at, because what we do as the Provincial Budget Analysis Chief Directorate, working together with our public finance, we look at the budgets of each province, and we look at all the items in terms of where they're spending a big amounts and where there's room for reprioritization. And what I found of late, I don't think that part of consultants has been really a big issue. So that's what I'm saying, in my view, if we're to compare prior to implementation of OSD versus currently now, there's really not a huge amount of money that is spent, except where departments are spending on the service that we don't have, like for instance, whether it's it's not even printing of let's say the annual reports and all of those books. I mean, those services we don't have in government per se. So I think that's where we find money being spent on, but it's not a lot of money. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, I'm not going to take a second round of questions simply because we have another presentation. I see the DG, Mr. Malila, is also here in the session with us. I hope he's been paying attention to some of the revelations that National Treasury has given today. But it seems, in short, that currently we are doing piecemeal negotiations because we get obviously the answers on negotiations 1 year at a time at the moment for our budgets instead of for a full MTEF period. We need 9 billion rand as a country. We don't want to borrow because that's bad maths, but we don't know where we are going to get it. We want to protect services, but honestly, I'm not sure whether we have a plan in this regard. Mr. Marke, if we don't borrow, where are we going to get the 9 billion rand from?
Like I said, Honorable Chair, if you look at, let me go back to 2020-21. We have what we call the windfalls. So the windfalls are your higher than anticipated revenue collections. So even if you look at the slide that we presented on additional allocations, that the 9 billion that we gave to education and all those other monies. So that came as a result of the relief that was brought by the windfalls. So, and like I say, we hope that those will continue in the current financial year. But if they don't continue in the financial year, the current financial year, then reprioritization will have to happen. And that's where we will have to sit and say, what is it that we first of all, which sectors must we protect from this reprioritization? If we say education must be protected, you put it aside. Health, put it aside. Police, put it aside. And you're left with these other ones. And you then go back. And that is the work that is normally done by our IGR and public finance colleagues. And then we go back and we say, within these remaining sectors, I mean, where is there a room? I mean, are there underspenders and all those kind of things? So So it has to be an exercise that must be done. But from what I mean, the projection that came from our tax policy side is that we probably might still be lucky in the current financial year with the continuation of those windfalls. So if it's 9 billion, we might. I'm saying we might be able to be lucky in the financial year and be able to fund it through the windfalls. But it's a combination of those, Honorable Chair. It's not the one straightforward answer that says no, the money is good. Because like I said, it's not there. So it's not a straightforward just say no, the money is sitting somewhere. So we'll have to look at those things. So I think at the moment it's encouraging. It looks like our revenue performance is still doing well, and we hope that it will bring that as that relief. If it's not, reprioritization will have to be one of the way in which we'll have to do it. But I think we will provide guidance as and when we proceed with this. Like I said as well, I think Mr. Malila, I'm glad he's here. So when we engage also in the mandate committee, I mean, we do present what the cost implications are, and I guess when we go back again, we'll have to also then advise on where this money is going to be coming from once we then conclude with this. And through the Budget Council as well as the TCF, we will be able to then give them proper answers on where the money is going to come from. But at the moment, as I'm saying, it's a combination of a whole lot of things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Marke. DJ, I saw you put your video on. I'm not sure if there's something specifically you would like to add, but from what I can hear so far is that I have a little Irish clover badge in my wallet. So I feel that I'm probably going to have to use that little clover more often. And I've heard that Member Bosma knows how to pray very well. So I'm not sure exactly whether there are going to be these extra windfalls of revenue, but maybe DG Malila, if you perhaps know where this 9 billion rand could come from, I'm not sure if the minister is as shocked as I am about some of these revelations, but I don't know how luck is necessarily going to assist us in the situation.
Yeah, Chair, thank you very much. And I mean, I also want to say thank you to Marumo and to Ogalis also has spoken. I mean, it's old colleagues of mine, so thank you for briefing. Maybe just for the information of the committee, I mean, I attended the mandating committee, it was last week and Monday. The Premier always attends it. The Premier had other business, so I stood in on behalf of Western Cape government. The reality is, Chair, I think as government, we find ourselves fairly with our backs against the wall. I mean, they've gone through a lengthy explanation in terms of the wage negotiations. I think union started at about 11 or 12%. Government initially only offered 2%, and obviously we're standing at about 6.5%, as was presented by Maruma. The reality is, and I mean, the Minister of Finance was quite adamant in that meeting, is that he's not going to breach the 9 billion mark. In fact, he didn't want to actually add any money. But I think government generally are faced with, you know, you either need to add this to the fiscus, or you potentially sit with a strike on your hands. So I think in terms of the revenue streams, I'm sure National Treasury have run the numbers. We've seen sort of an upsurge in tax revenue. In addition to this, and I see David is also on the call. David, I said David's, but maybe Annalise or one of the other Treasury officials can speak to it. We had a budget policy committee meeting Tuesday this week, where the Treasury actually, you know, went through extensive analysis of how we're going to approach the next year's budget. It's going to be difficult. I mean, the service pressures are mounting. You know, more people are standing in the queues. In this province, we feel it. We've got a very tight, let's call it COE strategy in place that's run between the Treasury and my department, because obviously we're responsible for all the appointments across except education and in health. And that is a mechanism that's used to actually just control and manage the situation. The reality is that if that money is not available within the current fiscus, then NT either needs to go and borrow it, or alternatively, they will have to cut baselines of departments, national departments, or have a balance of a combination of many other factors to try and find the 9 billion. Obviously, the issue, Chair, is that the 9 billion will carry through because, I mean, there is a portion or part of the 9 billion will carry through because there is a portion that will go as a salary increase. So we will be faced in future with kind of further pressures on the system. But at least for now, we're working hard on economic recovery. I mean, if the economy grows, then obviously it will add to more taxes in the system. And I mean, I agree with Marumo. The last thing that you must do is to go and borrow money for salaries. I mean, you can simply not go and borrow money for salaries. It doesn't make economic sense, Chair. You made the point. The numbers will just never add up. And in fact, you get yourself closer and closer, you know, to a fiscal crisis. So I think this is kind of the first round. The unions must finalize it by today. That was my recollection from the meeting I attended, you know, as part of the mandating committee. And Minister Kodongwana has been very, very hard in that meeting. Say, guys, that's it. We're not moving. And I mean, I don't necessarily want to say what's the backup plan because obviously, you know, the negotiating committee needs to deal with that. But yeah, that's I think where I think we found ourselves generally as a country. So provinces are putting plans in place, NT is putting plans in place, and it will probably be a combination of various fiscal instruments, you know, to try and find 9 billion or a big chunk at least of the 9 billion. That's also to cushion provinces and national departments in the system. So that's just the comment I want to bring into the system. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Colleagues from National Treasury, thank you so much for the presentation today. We really appreciate it. And I think you've given the members of the committee a lot to think about in terms of possible recommendations and resolutions, but as well as how to assist with this problem going forward in the MTBPS period. But those in National Treasury, if you have anything else that you need to go about in your day-to-day, you're more than welcome to go and do that. So you're excused from the meeting. We are now going to deal with the Provincial Treasury briefing. The Minister has already made some introductory remarks a bit earlier, and I know there's another engagement that she needs to attend. So I'm just going to ask HOD Savage or Ms. Pick. I'm not sure who's going to be leading the presentation, but you're welcome to put that up now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As before, in terms of for the quarterly performance, it is in terms of a partnership between ourselves and the Department of the Premier. And quarter four, as we also do know, is also a preliminary outcome for the entire financial year for 21-22, and that is what we are presenting to you today. My colleague on the Department of the Premier today is going to be Mr. Jacques Barnard, who's going to do this presentation with me. And I will try and also then just in terms of show some of perhaps the implications, what has come out of the National Treasury presentation, what that means for us as in the Western Cape and what we've done thus far. And then also a little bit just of the implications of what that does mean for the budget 2023 that has been kicked off officially with the Budget Council of Khotla early in June. So if we can kick off in terms of the quarter report, we're going to the next slide. Mr. Pinard, if you could shift to the next slide, please. So while the next slide is coming up, Chair, if you allow me to continue, this slide, and I need to remind ourselves just in terms of what this presentation also represents. So for the two presentations, Mr. Pinard, could you just indicate, are you having some technical problems?
Sorry, Chair. I don't know if the slide is showing on your side. I'm presenting the slide preliminary 2021 financial
You can
and
put the next
non-financial
slide
performance.
on. Yes, the next slide.
Must I go to the next one?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
All right, so
Sorry, Annelies, just hang on a little bit. Misschien perhaps I've got
Right.
technical problems on my side as well. So let me just
no, we can see the
again.
next slide. Okay. All right. So while Mr. Pinard
I'll
is
say it
sorting
again, sorry.
So while Mr. Pinard is sorting it out here, I will just continue and because this presentation also sets the basis and the foundation for the second presentation that the Budget Committee has asked on for the quarterly performance system presentation to be made. So I just want to also then lay the foundation in indicating that this presentation on financial and non-financial information represents two different systems. One is the financial system that gets reported directly into the National Treasury. The other one is the non-financial reporting system that gets reported into the framework of the Department of the DPME. Now, these are two different systems in the first place. This is also in terms of systems that is verified by ourselves in the Provincial Treasury on the financial side, and then by the Department of the Premier, which has an intense verification system on the non-financial or the what is also called the quarterly performance reporting, the QPR side. So what we are looking for in terms of going forward, and this slide is really just in terms of some of the baby steps and where we're wanting to show you where we're wanting to go. And that is in terms of integrating the performance information from a non-financial and a financial perspective. We feel that this is quite important for us in terms of if we're wanting to measure true performance and also if we want to start measuring impact, then we require the integration not only of our systems, as I'm indicating here, the two systems, but integrating also data, but data and research overall, and that kind of integration would then be able for us as a government then to be able to understand in terms of the real performance of departments and the impact of the outputs that we are having as a government. But so in this slide, what we are showing you is in terms of the non-financial information. So you can see in terms of the non-financial information here, in terms of the green bars, that is indicating to you that 79% of the targets have been met on average by the departments, while at the same time they've spent, and then that's the dark blue line there indicating to you at the same time that they've met those targets, they've spent 99% on average as a province that we have spent. So in order to produce those targets, we have spent an average 99% of our budget. So this slide also then gives you an indication just in terms of where we are going and what we mean by integrating, and therefore in terms of the kind of information that will become available incrementally over the next 2 financial years. I'll now go into some of the detail on the financial side and the outcomes then for the province where the departments are concerned on the next slide. And on the next slide.
I already shifted to the next slide. I already shifted, so I think there's a delay somewhere. Sorry, Chair.
No problem. Let's just wait for it to go to slide 4. Alternatively, we do have the presentation. Perhaps, Dustin, if you would like to share the slide for us.
Yeah, Chairperson, I'm now busy quickly getting my screen ready for that, Chairperson.
Okay, Mr. Pinard. Sorry,
Yes,
I'm just going to ask, can you unshare from your side? And then I'm just going to, there it goes to slide 4. Okay. Let's do that. You unshare and then Dustin shares and then we can go on from slide 4. Thank you so much.
I'm just loading, Chair. Just give me 1 second Apologies, members. There we go. Can everyone see my screen?
Thank
Yes,
you
we
so
can.
much.
I can see it from my side. Thank you, Dustin.
Perfect,
So we're on our
thank you.
slide 4, if you don't mind.
There we go.
All right, thank you. So on slide 4, this gives you an overall picture of the financial outcome for the 21-22 financial year. And as you can see, as an average, what we have spent for the 21-22 financial year is an average of 99% of our budget. This is an improvement if we're just comparing spending. On the previous financial year, we spent 98.2% of our budget. There was then an underspending of about 1.3 billion rand. And as you can see, the underspending at this stage preliminary comes to about 730 million rand. And then in terms of just if we look at overall in terms of what it actually means for the inputs where our budget is concerned. So as you can see, I mean, we have underspent on compensation of employees out of a 39 billion rand budget. We have underspent about 33.6 million rand. And I mean, this is so close on target because that means we spent 99.9% of our budget. And Chair, if you allow me, I just want to pause here because I mean, the first hour of this conversation was really about COE. So what you are seeing here, I think, is also a testament to some of the impacts that's coming through from our budget strategies and our COE strategy that we have been rolling out as part of the 2021 budget already. And that is in terms of trying to contain our COE budget as much as possible. We've allowed departments to have a differentiated approach around the compensation of employees to contain that budget. There are some transversal principles that departments have put in place. So majority of them have a COE committee now where when they do have vacancies, they first, for example, would look at in terms of some of the critical posts that they need to fill. They'll also then look at in terms of if there's any further efficiencies that they can gain. So there's a question mark of filling every post before the post is filled. It is not in terms of, in most of the departments, it is not anymore in terms of just an automatic filling of posts when there are vacancies as in the past. So that is some of the instruments that the department has implemented. But that has also meant that it gives departments room within their COE budget to look at in terms of the composition of their staff, and so in terms of applications for retirement, and we have allowed as the Treasury that the departments any savings that they do have on COE and they do want to approve applications for retirement, that they can actually utilize, obviously, the COE savings for that. So most of the departments are actively looking at maintaining that wage bill for the Western Cape. That is how we have managed to maintain a 52% spend of our budget on COE over this period of time. So, and we have improved this year. Because last year we had an underspending on COE to almost 400 million, and you can see that is now 33.6 million in the 21-22 financial year. Then in terms of the major, in terms of where the 731 underspending across the board is coming from, it's mainly in goods and services, and transversely it's the impact still of COVID that has had, and the fact that and we'll come to the next slide in terms of some of the detail in health, but in terms of the impact that COVID has had, not only within health, in terms of the services that they're providing and the phases, the impact of the different phases of COVID, but also in terms of from an infrastructure perspective, for the infrastructure industry, how COVID has impacted from that perspective. So you'll see then on goods and services, you'll also see then in capital assets, which is on the infrastructure side, And then in terms of transfers and subsidies, that's mostly in terms of the Department of Health, which I'll give you the detail on the other side. So then the next slide is some of the detail in terms of that 731 million rand underspending that you are seeing. And I'll start off with the Department of Health. As I indicated, the impact of COVID, as we would expect, was still impacting in terms of health. So the underspending of the 731, 294 million is within terms of the Department of Health. And that is in terms of the rollout of the vaccine, which doesn't in terms of end in a financial year. Just because the financial year ends, I mean, the vaccine rollout is a continuous process. So in terms of you'll see some of the underspending where that is concerned. And then also the phases of COVID was not as severe as was expected. And then lastly, also you saw on the transfer payments that I indicated, mainly in terms of the underspending, the medical legal claims or the payouts as we have budgeted for was less than we budgeted for, and that also then allows for savings. I just need to indicate on the medical legal, that does not mean that that is true savings. It just is about timing also. So sometimes in terms of, there is a judgment call of perhaps in terms of how long a case will be handled, and that also then would sometimes go over financial years. And therefore, it's not a true saving always. It is in terms of that the medical legal claims could be paid into the next financial year. Then on transport and public works, there's an underspending we see of 206 million rand. Yeah, it's in roads and in a bit in terms of public works, in terms of some of the underspending. There were contractual delays within roads and in public works, and then also the impact of COVID. Now, if you remember, we did have a 200 million allocation for quarantine and isolation facilities with transport and public works. And because of this, the less severe impact that phase 3 and phase 4 had, not all the expenditure was then incurred in terms of these facilities. So therefore, the knock on in expenditure where that's concerned. Within the Department of the Premier, preliminary underspending reported at 42 million rand, mainly within goods and services, and here's a combination, and the impact also of a COE strategy. So obviously in terms of with compensation of employees, the concomitant expenditure for staff would also be in terms of the IT requirements for staff, for example, furniture that staff would require, new staff would require, and so on. So the more and more departments are managing their wage bill and reducing the actual COE, that will also have an impact on concomitant goods and services expenditure of COE as well. And that is what happened within the Department of the Premier, as well as in terms of the exits and retirement of staff, would also then have that kind of impact. Then in terms of machinery and equipment, this is also some of a transversal underspending across departments. We do know the shortage of IT equipment due to the impact of the pandemic. That has hit all our departments, but we also then also understand that departments, in the fact that we have now improved in terms of our digital capacity, in terms of providing services, but also in terms of continuing our services on a digital platform, has meant that IT refresh has happened across all departments. That is much needed in order to continue these services. But because of the impact then of COVID in terms of supply chain, where IT equipment is concerned, most of our departments have some savings where that's concerned. And that is also then part of a rollover application because they have put the orders in. It's just not reached our shores as yet. Then in terms of human settlements, there's an underspending of 40 million in this financial year. That's really in terms of from a goods and services perspective. There's in terms of property payments, some savings in terms of some security expenditure on certain properties that they have. And then also during near the end of the financial year, and in terms of some of the Auditor General's initial reports in terms of some of the recordings within transport and within human settlements, some of what they thought that they could use and record as revenue, they no longer could record, and therefore they needed to make a subsequent saving or underspending on expenditure. But then also they had a bit of a policy change on what they utilize as part of the human settlement grant for OPSCAP. That has been a policy change also at the national level, and so that has also then transpired in some underspending. When we move along and we look now at public entities and their outcome, public entities and their outcome for the financial year, they have spent 94% of their budget. And in terms of where spending has not occurred as the budget, in terms of the liquor authority, the majority of the underspending is there. And it is on a project that they are rolling out. And this is about the reappointment of contracted junior liquor license inspectors. Now, the Liquor Authority did receive some additional funding from the Department of Community Safety for this project. And there is a combination of reappointment, but there's also in terms of additional liquor inspectors that they are looking at recruiting as well, and so that has not gone according to the budget. And then also the same as I indicated on the IC equipment, there was also underspending on that in terms of IC equipment not arriving in time at the end of the financial year. Regarding the Gambling and Racing Board, there's 9.4 million rand reported underspending. And this is really in terms of a combination of cost containment measures that the Gambling Board is always looking at in terms of where there are opportunities to do so. And so it's also a combination of from a COE perspective and then on actual goods and services, which the impact of COVID also has impacted the kind of services and the service platforms that they utilize. In Cape Nature, the underspending of 7.3 million is really effectively in terms of from a COE, and that is managing their COE budget. The same rules that apply for provincial departments in the Western Cape government applies for our public entity departments. We're looking at in terms of, for example, pay parity for public entity officials, and we also have given the same kind of rules that we've given for the department. We've also then given for the public entities, and so there's also a cost containment strategy where they're concerned. Moving along in terms of some detail now on infrastructure. And this is the outcome of our infrastructure. Overall, we've spent 96.7% of our 8.6 billion rand budget on infrastructure. There's various factors in terms of for not spending 100% of the budget. And I've already mentioned some of them, such as the knock-on effect of COVID that has had overall on the industry. But also, obviously, the knock-on effect that COVID has had in terms of responding within health to COVID at the same time in terms of the impact that it's had on the rollout of its infrastructure budget. Then in terms of the delays in terms of the supply chain and the limitations, that has also impacted. And you can see that within health, the underspending there also consists of underspending on the health revitalization grant. I can report that in the meantime has been, they have applied for rollover to the value of almost about 60 million rand, and that has been approved at the national level for rollover for the Department of Health. And so that spending actually can continue in the current financial year as it is. Then the other underspending that you'll see there within transport, about 95% of the budget that was spent within transport, which is then essentially our roads. And that is in terms of some of it in terms of slow progression of the projects, but also the impact that COVID has had on the industry within roads as well. Lastly, the slide from my side in terms of the next slide, Dustin. Sorry, infrastructure is in terms of just some detail on some of the infrastructure projects. Now, we always speak about this in terms of the pipeline of projects, and this actually just gives you a graphical representation of, firstly, the different phases of an infrastructure project, as you can see at the bottom, starting with project initiation, going all the way in terms of looking at final completion, or even if a project is on hold. So it gives you the different categories there. And then in terms of it also then provides you some detail in terms of some of those categories. Now, we always say that the infrastructure project is multi-year projects, and this gives you a bit more of a feel of why we say it's multi-year projects, because the departments will, the infrastructure projects will move through the different phases as you see there, and also through in terms of over the MTF will move over the different phases. So the project pipeline, as you can see, by the end of March, consisted about 744 projects. And this includes in terms of projects in terms of COE and projects that are packaged. And what we mean by projects that are packaged is, for example, your maintenance projects that would be packaged, and you'll see that then under the spike that you'll see there under other COE and packaged programs. That is mainly in terms of maintenance projects that you see there. But other than that, 40% is in the preparation phase. 40% is in the preparation phase, which it consists of in your project initiation, the feasibility and the design, as well as the tender phase. 43% is in terms of construction and in terms of working towards completion and final completion. So you can see it's almost kind of like a 50-50 in terms of in preparation phase and in construction where the pipeline is concerned. Just to say also on infrastructure, in the 2022 budget that we tabled, I think the budget committee will remember the emphasis and the priority was on infrastructure. And therefore the reporting system going forward then will also have not only this kind of detail, but some more detail per department on some of the infrastructure implementation and rollout of the reporting system. On my side, and the last slide from me at this stage is in terms of the provincial receipts. And from provincial receipts, you'll see that we have over-collected on our revenue. And the main drivers there in terms of the over-collection of the 458 million rand over-collection that we've seen, about 290 million of that is coming from gambling taxes. And then the difference then in terms of the other over-collection is also coming in terms of from motor vehicle license fees at this stage. And so we do know motor vehicle license fees, majority in terms of what we're funding that revenue through goes in terms of our transport section of our budget. So that mainly goes in terms of maintenance and construction of roads. As part of our fiscal policy. From here, Chair, I'll be handing over to Mr. Jacques Barnard, and he will be continuing and dealing with the QPR information of departments and entities.
Thank you,
I'm just going to ask Mr. Barnard just to if something is self-explanatory on a slide, you're welcome to go a bit faster. I always take it that members have read their documents, and if they have not, then that is their problem. Okay, thank you so much.
Noted. Okay, next slide. Okay, Chair, the quarterly release that we issue for Q4 represents non-financial performance data within the province for the 13 departments, 9 public entities. And there are two lenses that we look at when we look at non-financial performance. We provide a snapshot on the overall performance of the data in relation to the progress against Q4 targets, as well as a snapshot of the COVID-19 interventions for the 2021 financial year and new interventions for the current financial year across the year. There are also two important points to note. The COVID-19 interventions are collated via MS forms by the Provincial Data Office, and all organizations validate their quarterly performance prior reporting. Next slide.
you. Okay, this slide provides an overview of the provincial performance for Q4 per department, expressed as numbers and percentage achieved. On aggregate, there's about 537 targets, or 79%, that were achieved, out of a total of 676 targets contained in this quarter for the 13 departments. Furthermore, 106, or 16%, of the total number of targets were partially achieved, and 33, or 5%, were not achieved. Some key reasons that were offered by departments was that some targets were achieved in the third quarter. There were some demand-driven indicators, delays on funding and procurement, and dependencies on stakeholders. Another factor was also the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Back to that slide we were, not yet. The overall performance within the provincial cluster revealed that the governance cluster achieved the better performance of 92%, the economic cluster 82%, followed by the social cluster at 70%. Next slide. Okay, this slide provides an average performance for department. In this quarter was 79%. 9 departments achieved higher or equal to the average, and 4 departments achieved lower. Those were Department of Health at 61%, Social Development at 53%, Human Settlements at 69%, and then Transport and Public Works at 49%. And it should be noted that the provincial average for the Q4 was higher than previous quarters in the current financial year. Next slide. Okay, on the performance of the 9 public entities, 87 targets, or 74%, were achieved out of 118 contained for the 9 public entities. 21 of these targets, or 18%, from the total of 118 targets, were partially achieved, and 10, or 8%, were not achieved. The key reasons here for underperformance was also demand-driven indicators, the impact of COVID-19, funding constraints, as well as dependencies on stakeholders. And also here, the governance cluster achieved the better performance at 93%, followed by social cluster at 90%, and the economic cluster at 64%. Slide. Okay, on average, the public entities had a 74% average achievement. 6 public entities achieved higher or equal than the average, and 3 public entities achieved lower, which is in Westgrove, Casidra, Saldanha Bay, as well as the Saldanha SPRDZ. In comparison with the departments, the Q4 was a bit of a lower performance than previous quarters on the average. Next slide. Okay. In comparison, the performance of departments during Q4 between the financial years 2020-21 and 21-22. During 2021, the departments achieved against a total of 639 indicators, in comparison with 2021-22 of a total of 676, which was higher. On aggregate, 77% of set targets were achieved during 2021, and for 2021-22, a 79%, which is a 2% difference. Next slide. Okay, comparing the performance of public entities between the financial years for Q4. For 2021, they reported against 114 targets in comparison with 21-22, where they reported against 118, slightly higher. On aggregate, 72% of the targets were achieved during 2021, and in 21-22, there was a 74% achievement, also a 2% difference. Next slide. Okay, and COVID-19, the next slide. Thank you. Okay, 58 interventions were reported on during 21-22 for COVID-19. In 2021, there was 48 total, and in 21-22, there were 2 new interventions that were introduced. The progress of the interventions reported collectively quarter to quarter until completion. The number of completed interventions were for quarter 1, 10, quarter 2, 8, 2 for quarter 3, and for quarter 4 there were 20. 19 interventions for 21-22 are carried over into the current financial year, 22-23. Next slide. That is just a view of the or a summary of the 20 interventions completed during quarter 4 for 21-22. Next slide. Okay, final slide is that for COVID-19 in the Western Cape, we completed interventions that contributed towards hotspot themes, slowing the spread, economic recovery, and communication. The spatial location of interventions confirmed that the impact was not necessarily on a specific municipality, but across the Western Cape government. Interventions also contribute towards the Western Cape Government Recovery Implementation Plan with priorities, jobs, well-being, and dignity, as well as safety. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. That concludes our presentation.
Thank you so much. I am going to ask if Premier's department can also just do their presentation as it is in the same subject matter before I just take questions. Thank you.
Janet, are you going to deal with it?
Yeah. Thank you.
Chair, if I may, perhaps in terms of if Dustin could flag that presentation for us as well, please.
No problem. Dustin, are you sorted with the presentation then?
Chair, I'm seeing that, Madam, Mr. Paul Pina. Okay, I can lower that for you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you and welcome and good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to share on our quarterly performance system. I am going to start off with the strategic approach. You ready? Yeah. So thank you. So I'm going to start with the strategic approach in terms of where are we going? We want to incrementally enhance the value of performance data by increasing its access and value in decision making. And just as a start, Annalise Speak already started to demonstrate in her presentation how we incrementally starting to integrate financial data and non-financial performance data quarter on quarter. What we want to do, we want to derive insights, obviously through further and deeper analysis, quarter on quarter, be it on a policy level in terms of a policy area, jobs, well-being, safety, or sectoral level, education specific or health specific, or on a budget program level, whether it is a sub-program or on a sub-program level. We want to improve decision making on the effectiveness and efficiency, the relevance, and also sustainability relating to impact of government programs. Because that impact ultimately needs to reflect on the citizen. And these concepts such as effectiveness, efficiency, and relevance, sustainability, it's universal concept that is being used when one want to deepen any analysis. Very much from qualitative. And why is this so important? Both Annalise and Jacques have actually spoken about reasons for underachievement, reasons for under budgeting or over budgeting. And these reasons are key themes that actually emerge quarter on quarter. And we need to deepen that understanding. We also want to communicate a coherent message on government performance to the public. And the picture that you see that's depicted on the slide, it is the overview of the budget, our annual performance plan, and very importantly, our provincial strategic plan or our provincial strategic implementation plan. Thank you. Do you want to move to the next slide?
Justin, you just have to go to the next slide.
And there is a slide before that. No, the second slide. The one, yeah.
Justin, are you able to hear us?
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Chair. So what is our current value add? We are proud to say that we are centered around a sound governance platform, but we want to co-create. And we're co-creating Provincial Treasury, Department of the Premier, different components, and also with other government departments. And we co-create and we guide all 23 organizations with performance planning and reporting. And that is our Western Cape government institutions and our public entities. We share performance data with key stakeholders to improve decision making and with the ultimate intent to improve service delivery. So performance data is becoming a core data asset for Western Cape government and also within the governance space. And we are now starting to maintain all that performance data products in our Western Cape data portal for consumption by all provincial organizations. And just yesterday, the Department of the Premier in their .p Pulse actually have a nice article around our Western Cape data portal. But we're now ready to drive a culture to expand the use of performance data because ultimately we really need to, we want to improve our accountability. Thank you. Next slide. Justin, would you like? Okay. So I'm just going to go very briefly into our quarterly performance system. What is it? Just the context, as you know, the Provincial Data Office, we manage the reporting systems. All organizations, legislatively, we need to have an M&E system in place. We support them and gather that performance data. We track it, we validate it. It lands in an eQPR system. The national departments, DPME, sector departments can access it, and there are frameworks and guidelines that actually ensure that there are full governance arrangements, data governance arrangements in place. But what support do we give? We provide a roadmap for standard data practices. There is the technical indicator description, which is basically just gives us a full attributes of all the indicators that actually can tell us what we're actually really measuring. Is there policy relevance to those indicators that we're measuring? We have our own guidelines and to provincialize what DPME is actually asking us to do. And we provide technical assessments and ensuring good quality performance data. So what do we do with the data? This quarterly performance data is extracted from our quarterly releases. We maintain the provincial performance indicator frameworks, and then that helps us to maintain a key data source. And just in the previous slide, we actually also show an example of these releases. That's it. Thank you. And there you could see the quarter releases that is being done by the Department of the Premier, the quarter releases that is done also by the Department of the Premier Policy Unit, and then the data set by Provincial Treasury. And ultimately, where we're going now, it is the integration of those data sets or those data sources. Thank you. Next slide. So what benefits? Western Cape government data consumers is the executive, it is the budget committee, treasury, line management, stakeholders, and cluster audit committees. The public benefits, because we publish the quarterly performance data on the Western Cape government website. but we do have limitations. Our quarterly performance reporting system is a national reporting system that does not allow for system integration. The scope of the performance data in the ecosystem is only limited to APP performance indicators, and that is a limitation. Our thresholds differ, because as you could hear, Jacques speaks about partial achievement and so forth, where national don't speak about partial achievement, it's just achievement and non-achievement. Our data in the QPRS has limited attributes. And the more attributes the indicator has, much more. We have much more scope to broaden our analysis. And we maintain the system manually. Thank you. Part B. It's about how we want to expand the depth and the breadth of the performance data. So there's a realization that one can do more with performance data, currently only by different custodians. That custodians across Provincial Treasury and the Department of the Premier, not forgetting custodians in other departments. Provincial Treasury Department of the Premier, we want to bring together those financial and non-financial performance data into those core data sets to enable better insights. And how will we get that better insights? Through deepening our analysis. We also realize that performance indicators exist outside these, and it's within the departments and specific projects and also transversal projects, especially within our provincial strategic implementation plan. So we are embarking on a journey to expand the depth. We want to deepen, we want to widen, because we want to increase, we want to up use to inform service delivery improvement. So such a journey would require integration of the data itself. The financial data, which analysts have presented, non-financial data, which Jacques Barnett has presented. But very important, that integration of non-financial performance data, which have legislative requirements and non-legislative requirements, that is a critical success factor for the integration of the financial and non-financial data. So we're moving towards, the journey involves creating a master data set that is representative of core indicators of interest. We want to utilize the master data sets to do more analytics and stimulate discussions in the budget committee, stimulate discussions as cabinet, stimulate discussions at PTM level. And then ultimately, incrementally build on that master data set. Thank you. So we have put a roadmap in place. And that roadmap is that integration, ultimately to improve public accountability. So we've identified 4 steps for now. And that 4 steps is, very importantly, step 1, diagnose the financial and non-financial performance data environment. Because it's not all data that we want to use. It's part of those data that's going to speak to that critical indicator set of interest. Then step 2, we want to put building blocks in place towards the integration of the financial and non-financial performance data. And slowly, we taking innovative steps towards this. Initial enhancements to the current way of reporting to Cabinet and to Western Cape Provincial Parliament. And step 4 is that initial master data for the integrated data sets between Department of the Premier and Treasury. It's an exciting exercise. The journey or the 4 steps will follow an iterative process. Some of those steps can run parallel. Some of the steps are dependent on others, but it will be incremental. And our timelines will be over the current and the next financial year. And finally, a critical success factor, as I mentioned earlier, is that integration across non-financial data, non-financial performance data. But why? Because this step or this success factor needs to feed into step 2 of our roadmap. And we believe that non-financial performance data, centrally located, and over time also digitally accessible, will enable enhanced reporting. And what will the benefits be? Interactive reporting for our indicators, not only for the APP, but also for the APP and a provincial strategic implementation plan. We will be able to do better analytics from a quantitative perspective, but also use it for qualitative analysis, whether it is to be responsive in terms of our evidence generation or responsive to or using evaluative methods, and ultimately centralize our data location. And we're starting to do that already within a broader context of our Western Cape data portal. And then customize our user and a search and a reporting for our users. And then in summary, Justin, I will say in summary,
Yeah.
I can say, yeah, there's a sound data governance platform in place. And our performance team across the provincial treasury analyst team and in the department of the Premier, the provincial data office, and the policy team with Dr. Hildegard Voss, we will now move to the next level to enhance, to do these current enhancements. The strategic approach will enhance decision making because we want better outcomes and impact on government performance. Ultimately, it's about our accountability to the citizen. So I thank you.
Thanks, Enoch. Chair, that's it from our side.
Thanks, DJ, and thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. Colleagues, I'm going to take hands now. If none, I have 2 questions. Okay, so I'll just start with mine. I wanted to find out what would be required for the integration of the electronic quarterly reporting system. I saw that you identified it as one of the current challenges because it's a nationally based system. And is that then linked to reporting the indicators interactively? And in terms of the recommendations that you've presented, how long more or less would it take if one had to start implementing those? I mean, if we come back in 6 months, would we be able to ask for an update, for example? Thanks.
Enoch, you want to respond to that?
Yes, I will. No, thank you. Okay, so in terms of the latter question, in terms of in 6 months, we are in 6 months' time. Yes, we will be able to demonstrate incrementally progress according to the 4 steps: step 1, 2, 3, and 4. In terms of the integration, the focus will be on data integration rather than system integration. And we do provide the detail of those steps, and this is our conceptualization at this stage, and where we are in terms of integration or automation. There is progress around how we're starting to capture the indicators for our provincial strategic implementation plan, and then we also have, obviously, the data that's in our eKPR system. And the initial stage is that we use a technology, or we use our data technology, master data management, to start integrating the data using that tool. So it's more about data integration than system integration, and building an integrated database of the core indicators of interest in relation to the performance and the non-financial performance. The progress that we will start to incrementally build, it is about firstly looking at that integrated indicator framework per department, where HODs, we will ask via the DG and the HOD treasury that we will ask the HODs to actually have consensus on those indicators. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, can I just add to that? Chair, at the end of the day, what we want to do is we want to have proper data for decision making. So we do not want to duplicate. I think as Zenith has presented, a lot of the systems at the moment duplicate what we do, and that comes at an enormous price, particularly in terms of time, and we want to alleviate all those issues. So I'd say probably by the end of this financial year, we would be able to see some of the early signs and benefits, of the system. So if you can give us till the end of the financial year, Chair, I think that would be helpful. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I think instead of a general update on the data integration at the end of the year, I think it might be more useful to do not a simulation, but show how the system works rather than present the system to the members, because then you can speak to the update on the integration as well, show how it works specifically. Because if the different stakeholders are those within the policy decision-making area, sometimes we have these systems available to us and we have the data available to us, but it is not always integrated within the decision-making process. And I think I would like to see more of that type of data being integrated within our various different decision-making processes. Just going to try and find out quickly if there's any other hands from members. If none, I just want to thank Provincial Treasury and the Department of the Premier, DG and HOD and Minister were all with us today. It was quite a bit of a full house today, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate the work always that goes into the quarterly performance reports. And both Provincial Treasury and Premier never disappoints in these statutory meetings when it comes to ensuring that the money of the Western Cape is used in an efficient and an effective manner towards the service delivery in our province. But if you have anything that you need to go do in your day-to-day schedules, you are welcome to go about that, and you're adjourned. For the members in the committee, we will now be dealing with some committee administrative matters. But thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, DG. Thank you, HOD. Thank you, Annelies.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, JB.
Thank you so much, everyone. That was a jam-packed meeting. Ms. Kluter, I see you're already on the ball with the first set of minutes for us. Perfect. Colleagues, we can just quickly, this is the minutes of the 24th of June. We can go through the page number 1. You can just check your attendance there. And then we can go through page 2. And then at the end of page 2, that is just my signature. And those were some of the WCBP persons that were also at the meeting. If I could have a mover for the minutes, please.
I move to adopt.
Thank you so much. If I could have a seconder.
A second.
Chairperson, I second that motion to adopt.
Thank you so much. I just want to check, Ms. Kluter, I don't think we have any other minutes that we need to adopt today.
Chairperson, through you, no, it's only that set of minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm now going to open up thus for any resolutions or recommendations, if anyone has any. While I'm not sure whether this will be a particular resolution, I would like the Department of the Premier, I know Ms. Ishmael is in this particular unit, to just do I'm not sure if we would call it a presentation, but to showcase the system for us online by the end of the year within more or less a 6-month period. Dustin, I'm not sure if you can use your fancy English to assist me here.
Chairperson, not a problem, Chair. I've already captured it as you requested it a few minutes ago, so I will just put it in a in a resolution, and Ms. Kluter will then vet it before it is approved by you, Chairperson. But Chairperson, I just wanted to find out for the end of the year. Normally November, December is normally adjustments appropriation period. Would it perhaps be more allowable for the committee to perhaps have it February next year, member? Because normally January is the school holidays and the members come back normally in the last week of January, and then February is normally free before we go into the appropriations in March. But it's all up to you and the committee, Chairperson. I'm just thinking in terms of timeline.
February is, I'm happy with February. Members in the committee happy with February?
So just explain again, when was it supposed to be in?
I proposed a 6-month period. We asked the Premier Department how long would it take for them to do the next update for the data integration. They said approximately 6 months. It is now July, but by the end of November, December, that's the annual reporting season. And then the committees kind of start up end January, beginning February again. So the suggestion is that we then have such an update in February.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you so much. And then colleagues, while I don't have any particular recommendations on this regard, I do think that we need to keep monitoring the public wage negotiations, as it will affect our MTBPSP consultation period. But also we will likely see it within the division of revenue adjustments that will be coming at the end of this year. And I am concerned that if national departments then do not cut their respective baselines, that we as a country may need to consider borrowing, and borrowing for wages as a principle is just bad mathematics. Okay, with that, colleagues, I just want to check, Ms. Kluter, Mr. Davids, do we have any other minutes or matters that we need to deal with?
None from my side, Chair. Thank you.
Nothing from my side, Chairperson.
Okay, I see. Apologies. I just want to mention that the reason Ms. Kluter is not with us today is she had a passing in the family, and we send our condolences in this regard to her. She did remind me in the meeting plan just to ask members just for assistance. On the 19th of August, we have the Children's Commissioner and the Gender Equality Commission before us to conclude previous budget resolution matters. I know the Children's Commissioner will be going in for a medical procedure soon, and she was hoping to join us on the day, but she's willing to send someone to be in her place on that particular day. I was wondering whether it would be possible if we postpone that meeting of the 19th, because I think given the nature of the presentation, I would like the Children's Commissioner to be part of the meeting, and I would like to give her that particular opportunity. Member Bosman, I see your hand.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I'd like to support that we postpone that meeting so that Commissioner Nomdu can be part of that meeting. And I also want to just add my thoughts and prayers to Ms. Kamish Ahmad and not to Ms. Kluter. Ms. Kluter is here. We are thinking of Ms. Kamish Ahmad during this very difficult time, and we wish her well.
Thank you so much, and thank you for that correction. I think with all the medicine that I'm taking at the moment, I need to go into bed now. But thank you so much. And colleagues, with that, we will then postpone the meeting of the 19th of August so that we are able to have the Children's Commissioner with us. And we will then contact them just to let them know that the meeting will thus be postponed. Also, please just keep an eye on your emails going forward. in the next few weeks, as you will receive some updates on the money bills procedure matters. But those matters will be communicated to you via email in terms of update of the project plan and procedure and stuff like that. Thank you so much. With that, the meeting is adjourned. Hope you stay safe and stay warm.